All right, we have our strategy, we have a plan. Now let's get it working. Let's start performing the backups. In performing the backups, you are going to have a backup solution. And that backup solution must, of course, meet your budget. It has to meet your needs. It has to be consistent with your strategy. And, it has to basically do what you need done to protect your data with backups. All right. And now, some examples of some backup solutions or backup software. Sometimes the solution involves more than just software, as we saw with you have your external hard drive, a NAS unit, or an appliance. But let's look at the solution in terms of software. An example would be Acronis Cyber Protect offerings. They have the Acronis Cyber Protect and the Acronis Cyber Protect Home Office, which is what I use. iDrive is another backup software that you can use. It's a simple, easy to use software. I also use that. Barracuda has their offerings. N-able. Many of you may be familiar with Carbonite, and there are a lot more. I can think of a Veeam, Mozy. I remember Mozy. I'm not even sure if they're still around. I think they are, but Mozy is another one. But there are different solutions out there, and you would just pick the solution that meets, of course, your budget and it meets your requirements for your backups. All right. So you're going to have that backup solution. You'll choose that backup solution, and you're going to install it, configure it, and then you're going to get things working. Now, before we get any further with the backup solution, let's step back a little bit. We talked about the backup types, and we talked about the disk image. Let me just say something about the disk image, and that is the difference between a disk image and a disk backup. And this, I think this is important. All right, a disk image or a copy of a disk can be used as is. All right, a disk backup must first be restored. All right. So let me give you this illustration. Let's look at it this way. A disk image stored on another hard disk to duplicate or copy another disk can be used in place of the original disk. So if you have the C drive in your computer and you make a copy of that, drive to another hard drive, then you can take that other hard drive and replace your original, and your system will boot up. It's because they're really identical. However, a backup is stored in the format defined by your backup software. And if you want to get that backup onto another disk, to restore it, then you would have to first restore from that backup. Let me give you an illustration. Let me show you. Let's look at this. Here is, I'm looking at a disk image. This is a copy of my C drive. It's actually on another physical disk that I have hooked up with a disk dock. All right. Now, let's go here. This one to the left is a disk backup. All right, it's the entire disk, but you notice it's in the format of the backup software. You see? Whereas this is just a copy of the disk. There's the Windows folder, there's the users folder, the Windows folder, all the different folders that's on my actual C drive. All right, so I could take this disk here and I could take the drive that's in my computer out, replace it with this one, and my machine would boot up. Okay, my machine would boot up and it would start running. So I just wanted to make that distinction for you so that you know the difference between a disk image and a disk backup, at least the way I'm presenting it to you. Because you can put an image anywhere, all right? But I'm talking about it if you make a duplicate of your hard drive, a copy of your hard drive. You can use that hard drive as is. Whereas if it's a backup, you have to first restore, and then you could use the drive. All right. Okay. Now, with that said, you got your backup software, installed. You configured it, or you're in the process of configuring it, and then you're going to have to create your backup schedule. When are you going to do your backups? Now, of course, you're not going to do it every day. What I mean by that is that you are not going to do it every day. You're going to set your backup software to perform the backups daily, if that's what you want, weekly, monthly, hourly, twice a day, whatever. All right. You're going to configure your backup software to do those, to perform those backups according to the schedule that you have configured. All right. So you don't have to do it. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to think about doing it, but you do have to think about your backup. And we'll talk about that later. Now, supplemental backups. What are supplemental backups? These are backups that you perform outside of your schedule. Now, remember, your backup software, your solution is performing the backups according to the schedule that you configured. All right, it's going to do the backups when you set it to do it. However, every now and then you might want to create a supplementary backup. Let me give you a scenario. Let's say I'm getting ready to update my operating system from Windows 10 to Windows 11. All right, let's say I'm going to do that. Now here, this is also something to think about. I'm going to update my operating system from Windows 10 to Windows 11. So what I might do first is what? Create a disk image right now. It's not scheduled. It's not on the schedule. I just want to do it right now, right before I upgrade my computer. That way, if something goes wrong, I can just roll it back to where it was. All right. That's a supplemental backup. And I might do that maybe once a month, once a quarter, just for the heck of it, just to have that backup there just in case I need it, or have a disk copy just in case I need it. You can do a disk image or a disk backup, and we just talked about the differences between those, right? And these are outside of your schedule. Let me give you an example of a backup plan or basic plan. Let's assume you want to back up a computer that has one hard drive. So now the situation here is you have your operating system and programs, you have your system and your data on the same drive. I prefer to have them separate, but a lot of times they're not. If you buy a new computer, it may not be that way unless you specifically configure it. But anyway, we're going to back up a computer with one drive, all right? And it's going to have a drive C. And let's say I want to back up my data files. I want to back up my data files daily at about 1 o'clock in the morning. And I want to keep 6 months worth of backups, all right? That's a plan. And I want to back up daily to a USB hard drive at about 11 o'clock p.m. with a retention of 9 months. I got more space. It's cheaper to buy a hard drive than to buy storage space and pay every month in most cases. All right, so here I have two backups. Remember the 3-2-1 rule. I have my original copies, and I have my original files, rather, and I have a backup that's being done on local, on another media, let's say on a NAS or on in this case, a USB hard drive. And I'm also having another copy of my backups going to the cloud. And I'm going to keep 6 months. Now, there are some systems where you just tell it to back up. It'll back up locally, and it'll automatically synchronize to the cloud. You don't have to create a separate backup job to do that. All right, but just for illustration purposes. Now, let's say I want to back up my entire disk. Okay, I can back up quarterly to the cloud. Okay, I can back up monthly to a USB device or a NAS or whatever. All right, and your backup software can handle that. And I might want to create a disk image semi-annually. Every 6 months, I'm just going to create a disk image, me. All right, that's on my schedule, in my calendar. All right, so this is just a basic example of a backup plan. Let's look at another one. Let's assume that I have a computer and I want to back it up and it has two hard drives, a system drive, drive C, and a data drive, drive D. All right, so I'm going to select certain files and folders on D drive to be backed up. If you want to back up everything on the D drive, well, you can just back up the entire drive. But I'm going to select some files and folders. I'm going to back it up daily, whichever I do. I'm going to back it up daily to the cloud at 1 a.m. I'm going to hold 6 months worth of backups. All right. And I'm going to back up daily to a USB hard drive at 11 p.m. with a retention of 9 months. Okay. Now remember we talked about bandwidth. All right. And remember we talked about the different types of backups. Now, here I'm doing, you see I have backups daily going to the cloud. All right. Now let's look at the system disk. I'm going to back up quarterly to the cloud and back up monthly to a USB hard drive. And I'm also going to create a system image every 6 months. But you notice this cloud storage. Remember your bandwidth. Now, depending on how much data you have to back up, this could take days to get fully backed up to the cloud. So you have to remember that because it's going to create a full backup the first time. The first time you run the software, more than likely, it's going to create a full backup. And if you have lots and lots of data, I mean, a terabyte or more, then it may take a long time to get up to your cloud storage. So that's maybe 2-3 days that you will not have backups for those particular days unless you do it here. You have that's why you have your USB backup as well. So you will have the backups. 3-2-1 rule. It's just going to take a lot longer for the full backup to get to the cloud. Just want to point that out to show you how your bandwidth and storage space and all that can come into play. But this is just another example of another backup plan. Daily backups going to the cloud. This is for drive D, and then I have a couple separate jobs for drive C. And then I'm only going to do an image of drive C because I'm going to use this image in case I have to reboot, in case I have to boot my system up. All right. The C drive fails. Oh, I got a copy of it. Stick it in there. Go get another hard drive, make another image. You're good to go. All right. Oh, but in this case, you're good to go. Okay. Now let me go back to example 1. In example 1, if my drive failed, then I have to restore my backups from your either your hard drive or your cloud, depending which one is available. All right. You would have to do that. All right. And you're done. Okay. Now your data files, excuse me, you have your data files getting backed up every day, and you have your entire disk getting backed up quarterly and monthly and so forth. So if the drive goes out, it fails, then I'm going to, at least to get me back up and running, I can get this guy going. I can either do that image if it's really recent, or I can pull out my monthly USB hard drive, backup where I have it backed up. And I can, restore to the new drive after we replace the failed one. And then I have to go back and restore my data up here from, first you're going to look to your hard drive, USB, because it's local, if that's available. Usually it is, unless you have some major disaster, or I'll bring it down from the cloud. All right, so I just wanted to make that point. All right, so those are a couple examples of your backup plan. So you've got your backup software installed, you've got your equipment, your devices all set up and configured, and now you can just sit back and not relax, you can sit back and allow the software to perform those backups and to give you a, some peace, so a peace of mind. Okay. And after that, let's talk about security. All right. We'll talk about, next we're going to talk about backup security.